There is a word for a man who can be triggered, and it's this: governed. Every reaction you have ever given to an insult, every defense you have ever mounted, every time you felt the heat rise and opened your mouth to correct the record, you were not protecting yourself. You were demonstrating that you could be governed, that the right words, aimed at the right wound, would produce a predictable response. And a man with predictable responses is not free. He is a mechanism. He is operated. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." The man who defends himself is showing the room exactly what he appears to be. Reachable, rattled, still seeking approval from people who have already decided to attack him. The man who smiles is showing the room what he actually is. A man whose interior has been placed beyond the reach of external chaos. That interior is what you are here to build. Let's begin. The oldest mechanism in human history. This did not begin in office meetings or social media comment sections. This began in the first human tribes, on the first plains, around the first fires. In those environments, emotional reactivity was not a personality trait. It was a survival signal. A man who could be destabilized by words could be destabilized by anything. Instability was contagion. Instability attracted predators, internal and external. The tribe could not afford it. So the man who reacted, who lost composure under social pressure, who could be moved by the crowd, was mapped. His triggers were catalogued. His weak points were noted by everyone above him and everyone who wanted to be. And once mapped, he was managed, not by force, by knowing which words to say and in which order to say them. Status was never assigned to the strongest man. It was assigned to the least readable one. The man whose reactions could not be predicted. The man who had no accessible map. Power flowed to him, not because he was dangerous, but because he was ungovernable. Because the cost of testing him was higher than the reward. Because every attempt to destabilize him produced nothing useful and left the attacker more exposed than they began. The man who could not be moved was something different entirely. He was a fixed point, an anchor, a reference that the chaos of the group organized itself around, without being able to disturb it. Nothing has changed. The mechanisms have simply been scaled. The boardroom is the fire circle. The social hierarchy is the tribe. The attack across a dinner table is the same dominance test it administered for 100,000 years. Your nervous system is still running the same ancient calculation. Is this man readable or not? And now, understand what has been built on top of that instinct. Decades learning that triggered people are not spontaneous. It is infrastructure. Media organizations, political systems, and social platforms have spent decades learning that triggered people are manageable people. That a population kept in a constant state of reactive emotion, cycling through indignation, defense, and the need to correct the record, is a population that cannot think strategically, cannot accumulate quietly, cannot operate from a position that has not been pre-mapped by someone else's framing. Outrage is not an accident. It is a governance system, and it runs on the same mechanism that ran around the first fire. Find the trigger, pull it, collect the reaction, establish the hierarchy. Every time you respond to a provocation, in public, on a screen, in a room, you are feeding that system with your most valuable asset, not your time, not your money, your predictability, your proof that you can be moved. Every reaction you give answers that question. In the wrong direction. Readable men are managed. Unreadable men are navigated around. And once you see that operating everywhere, in every room, every negotiation, every relationship, every public humiliation, every slow reputational erosion. You cannot unsee it. The vulnerability is the map. The fortress is having none. 1. What your reaction actually costs. They do not want to hurt you. Hurt is incidental. What they want is your reaction. Your reaction is the prize, the point, the entire reason the attack was launched. It confirms that their words carry enough weight to alter your internal state, that they have located the lever, that the mechanism works. Once that is confirmed, they own a map, a precise diagram of which words, in which sequence, in which room, produce which response. And that map does not expire. It will be used again. It will be shared. It will be handed to the next person who wants to manage you. This is why Machiavelli did not study who was admired. He studied who could not be reached. Because admiration is social weather. It changes. It reverses. It turns without notice. But the man who cannot be reached is not subject to weather. He is not a surface that the world acts upon. He is a structure that the world has to work around. Your anger is not power. Your anger is a map. Every time you show it, you hand that map to anyone willing to use it. There's a test that strips this bare. If someone calls you a purple elephant, you do not react. Not because you are composed, because the accusation has nothing to attach to. There is no wound waiting to recognize itself in it. The words arrive and pass through and find no surface. But when someone calls you selfish, weak, arrogant, fraudulent, and you feel that surge, it is because a part of you already holds that door open. The accusation did not create the doubt. It located the doubt that was already there, already waiting, already afraid of being named. Your reaction is not indignation, it is recognition. That is the hook. They did not need to know where the wound was. Your defense showed them. In front of everyone. This is not an argument. This is not a debate. And the man who defends himself has already answered the only question that was ever being asked. 2. What you are actually looking at. The shift does not happen in the room. It happens in what you see when you look at the person before you open your mouth. Right now, you see a threat, someone whose opinion carries enough structural weight to damage your position, your reputation, your standing in the hierarchy. That perception is the entire source of every defensive reaction you have ever had. It is also a misreading of the situation. What you are actually looking at is a dysregulated person broadcasting their internal condition outward, using you as the nearest available surface. Think about what that means at the biological level. Aggression as a social signal evolved for one purpose: to establish hierarchy by demonstrating that one organism can destabilize another. The display works only if the target is destabilized. A display that produces no reaction is not a demonstration of power. It is a demonstration of impotence. The aggressor needed a reaction to exist. You didn't give them one. The display collapses inward. The man who cannot be destabilized does not need to respond. His composure is already the answer, and it is a more devastating answer than any words could produce, because it tells the room, without explanation, without performance, without argument, this person attempted to govern me and found nothing to govern. In a negotiation, that signal is leverage. In a relationship, it is authority. In leadership, it is the exact quality that separates figures who command from figures who manage. In public life, it is the difference between a man who can be destroyed by a headline and a man who the media eventually stops targeting because he offers them nothing to feed on. Governed men are targets. Ungovernable men become expensive to attack. The attacker seen correctly is not a threat. They are a dysregulated organism running a dominance display that requires your participation to function. Your job is to refuse participation, not dramatically, not as a performance, as the simple, permanent expression of a man who is not available for this. 3. The surface that offers nothing. Your face is still betraying you. The jaw tightens, the eyes narrow, the brow drops. Every person in the room reads that configuration in under a second. It landed. The governed man has been located. The mechanism works. They did not need you to say a word. Your face was the answer. What if instead you smiled? Not mockery, not performance. The slight unhurried expression of a man watching a predictable sequence unfold. The expression that does not announce itself. The expression of a man who has seen this before and found it less interesting than whatever comes next. The attacker prepared for 2 responses: fight, anger, defense, escalation, or flight, retreat, submission, visible damage. The entire script requires one of these. When you offer neither, when you offer quiet amusement, the script finds no answer. The aggression turns back toward its source. The display, deprived of a target, becomes visible as a display. The room sees it, the attacker feels it. The calmer you are, the more unstable they appear. Escalation confirms their irrationality. Retreat confirms their failure. Either way, the frame belongs to you, not because you fought for it, but because you never placed it where they could reach it. The frame is not a position he holds, it is what he is, and what a man is cannot be argued away. 4. Agree and amplify. Now, the offensive. Instead of denying the insult, you take it and push it past itself until it collapses. You pick up the weapon and hold it like a toy. They say, "You're so arrogant." You say, "Completely. I've been thinking about having statues commissioned." They say, "You talk too much." You say, "I know. 3 libraries, lifetime bans." They say, "You think you're so smart." You say, "I solved a Rubik's Cube once. Still haven't recovered from the humility of that peak." What just happened is not a defense. It is a demolition. The attack requires a wound. It requires something inside you that fears the accusation might be true. When you treat the accusation as entertainment, you have announced the absence of that wound. Not by arguing for its absence, by demonstrating it. The proof is in the ease. The ease cannot be faked. Faked ease has the smell of bitterness underneath it, and the room detects it instantly. Real ease means the doubt is gone. Or more precisely, the doubt no longer has authority over your behavior. You are not pretending it does not exist. You have simply stopped letting it govern you. In a negotiation, this is the signal that removes leverage from the table. The person trying to pressure you with your own insecurities has just watched those insecurities fail to operate. In a leadership context, it is the public demonstration that you cannot be destabilized by those beneath you. In reputation warfare, it is the message that makes future attacks expensive, because they will not produce the reaction that justifies them. The ungovernable man makes attacks unprofitable. After enough failed attempts, even his enemies redirect their energy. 5. The psychoanalysis, the most lethal move in this framework. The one that ends it permanently. When someone attacks you, you do not engage the attack. You treat the attacker as a patient presenting symptoms. They say, "You're always so selfish." You say, "Are you okay? You seem really stressed lately." They say, "Nobody actually likes you." You say, "That's a strange thing to say. Is something going on with you?" They say, You think you're better than everyone here. You say, you've said that a few times now. What's really bothering you? Notice what is absent: defense, justification, any engagement with the content. You have looked at the attack, assessed it as a symptom of the attacker's internal condition, and responded to the condition rather than the words. You become the diagnostician, the stable reference point, the person in the room who is not managing their emotional state. Because there is nothing to manage. Your calm is not performed. It is structural. It reads as competence because it is competence. The competence of a man who knows exactly what is happening and has already decided it is not his problem. The attack loses its legitimacy without a word spoken against it. If the words contained truth, you would address them. Your refusal to engage is a verdict, not delivered, just inhabited. The silence where your defense was supposed to be is more devastating than any argument you could have made. Arguments acknowledge the premise. Silence dissolves it. And the attacker has no exit. Escalation confirms the diagnosis. They are unraveling publicly in front of the room. Retreat concedes the interaction. Either result belongs to you. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who makes his enemies look irrational without raising his voice has achieved something 1,000 arguments could not. Not a one debate. The end of the debate as a category. The ungovernable man does not win confrontations. He makes confrontation with him structurally unattractive. 6. The clean exit. After you respond, you are already gone, not physically. The interaction is over. You deliver the line, or the smile, or the silence, and you turn. Change the subject. Resume what you were doing. The exchange is already behind you, already irrelevant, already forgotten in the way that all noise is forgotten by a man pointed towards something that matters. This is where most men undo everything. They deliver a good response and then they watch for the reaction. They wait to see if it landed. They monitor the room. And in that pause, they reveal the thing they have been concealing, that they were performing, that they needed it to work, that the outcome still matters enough to audit. Real indifference does not check its own results. In a meeting, this idea is half-baked. You, quiet smile. Appreciate it. Immediately, no gap. Sarah, where were we on the timeline? In a negotiation. You're not in a position to make demands. You, slight exhale. Interesting frame. Turn to documents. The numbers say something different. In public, you think you're better than everyone. You, almost amused. Wild read. Already moving. Did you catch the second half? The message is carried entirely by behavior. It does not require words to be understood. It says, "This did not constitute an event in my life. I was elsewhere before you finished the sentence. This is the final signal of the ungovernable man." Not that he responded well, that the attack was too small to hold his attention. The architecture beneath everything, every social interaction, every negotiation, every public confrontation, every relationship that has ever tried to diminish you, all of it runs on the same ancient mechanism. The attempt to establish, through your reaction, that you can be moved, that the right pressure applied to the right wound produces a predictable response, that you are a surface the world can act upon. It requires your cooperation. It cannot be installed by force. It can only be accepted. Every time you defended yourself, you accepted it. Every time you explained yourself to someone who had already decided to attack you, you accepted it. Every time you felt the heat rise and opened your mouth to correct the record, you were signing the agreement. the agreement that your internal state is available for external management. Defense is that signature. Justification is that signature. Anger is that signature. Every reaction that proves you can be reached confirms that you are readable, and readable men get read. Constantly. By everyone in every room who is looking for the lever. Amused mastery is the refusal to sign, not as a technique, not as a response strategy, as the permanent expression of a man who has made a decision so deep it no longer requires enforcement, who has moved his interior so far from the reach of other people's assessments that when the test arrives, it finds nothing to test. Machiavelli did not teach the prince to have better arguments. He taught the prince to become someone whose position required no argument. The prince does not debate whether he is king. The question does not arise. It does not arise because nothing in his bearing invites it. His frame is not held. It is inhabited. And inhabited frames cannot be argued away because they do not present themselves as arguments. Not a set of moves, not a toolkit. A state. Triggered men are governed, ungovernable men cannot be ruled. The gap between those two sentences is everything, every defense you have ever mounted, every time you felt the heat and opened your mouth, every explanation offered to a person who had already decided to attack you. You were handing them the only thing they came for, proof that you could still be reached. What changes now is not the techniques. It is the decision underneath them, the decision that your internal state is not a public resource, that it belongs to you, that it is not available for the chaos of people who have not made peace with themselves, that the tests, when it comes, and it will come, in every room, in every form, will find a man who placed himself beyond its reach, long before it arrived. That decision is not made once. It is made every time. Against the instinct, which is old and very loud, to defend what does not need defending. The man who is ungovernable is not the man who never feels the heat. He is the man who feels it and does not let it speak. Machiavelli called it the mask of the prince. But it is not a mask. Masks come off. It is the structure underneath, like subscribe. And tell me, in one word, where are you still being read?